My manager enforces strict rules hoping that I quit, so I maliciously comply and become the ultimate rules stickler. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I used to work for a manufacturing company who makes waste containers, dumpsters, and such, and at first it was a good job with a good manager and no problems. I enjoyed the work. It was a dirty, physically demanding job, but it kept me in good shape. I could just put in my earbuds and cruise through the day without any issues. My initial job was to prep the units for painting by polishing imperfections with a sander and grinding down the areas that were too rough, as well as cleaning them up after the welders were done with them. But after a while, they kept laying off so many people and dumping their jobs on me that eventually towards the end of my time there, I was quality control, helped the painter, was a warehouseman, finisher, grinder, and also janitor, for no additional pay beyond the small cost of living raises we got once in a while. Prior to having all these jobs dumped on me, after about a year of working for this company without any issues, new management showed up. And as they like to do, they started making all kinds of changes just for the sake of making changes. Things that made jobs harder with no benefit, cutting corners that shouldn't be cut, and generally hurting productivity and workplace safety. The change in management was bad, but it wasn't the end of the world. It made things hard for no real reason, but all in all, things were still manageable. Until I ended up off work for about a month with a collapsed lung that I still to this day believe was caused by working conditions there and lack of ventilation and PPE. When I came back to work, I was on light duty for quite some time, since I had surgery to repair the lung to prevent it from collapsing again. I went from the golden boy who they called on when everything had to get done to the red-headed stepchild of the company, and management was doing everything they could to get me to quit. They would throw my tools away, hide my stools so I couldn't use them while I was working, and hassling me over things like my earbuds, citing safety as why I couldn't use them, even though OSHA themselves told me it wasn't an issue. The production manager would lie about things and write me up for non-existent violations, and refused to fix my bay doors that had been crashed into by forklifts numerous times that had to be closed and opened with a crowbar by 2 people, since the track was mangled. Other things include the company giving everybody in the plant raises except me, catching me 5 minutes before leaving work to go on my weekend and informing me that we had to work the next day, and selectively enforcing safety rules, even making up rules on the fly. After about 6 months, I'd had enough, and decided that if they wanted to constantly cite policy and safety rules to mess with me, then I could play that game too. I would make this manufacturing plant the safest company on the planet, and ensure policy was followed to the exact letter. This was now my mission. I began to slow my work way down, and only do the jobs I was hired and paid to do. Instead of doing the workload of 10 employees with nothing in return, they now got exactly 1 person's worth of labor out of me. Customers' orders began stacking up. Deliveries were late. Bad welds and welds that got missed during production were overlooked, causing the units to have to be repainted when they had to go back to the welding lines to be fixed. The warehouse became a wreck with containers backed up to the point that people didn't even have room to work. I went from completing a large unit in 30 minutes to it taking me 2.5 hours on the same one. Not to mention all the repairs that needed done that were missed during production when before I would have caught them before the units even left the production line. Other petty things I did included not showing up to work on Saturday when the manager would catch me at the last second and tell me I had to. I took to cutting out the text in the employee handbook, citing that working under scheduled hours required management to notify you 3 days in advance, and leaving a letter with that portion of the handbook on his desk the following Monday. There was nothing they could do since I was following the handbook to the letter. At this point, it was a game of who would blink first. They could lay me off and I could draw unemployment on them, or I would quit. Next on the list was safety. They liked to hassle me so much about trivial things that I figured they would appreciate me going through the plant and documenting every single last OSHA violation. along with any general safety violations and anything else that wasn't right. I had a notebook that was filled with violations from one end of the plant to another. Things like crane lifts that were being used improperly with J-hooks that OSHA previously warned the company about, the same J-hooks they liked to hide every time OSHA came through the plant, welders that had fray cords around puddles of water, tools being left on top of units that could fall off and hit someone, lack of ventilation, particle counts that were too high, and forklifts that were not serviced enough. I tagged out equipment that technically shouldn't be used in its current state, and locked out the forklifts that needed brakes or any sort of maintenance. Eventually, the production manager took the bait and untagged one of the forklifts I had locked out due to having bad brakes. Anybody who knows lockout procedure can understand what a massive screw-up that is. Once I compiled my list of improvements, I went to the government official who was overseeing safety and procedure since we often worked on government orders. I gave him my notebook, informed him of my manager taking the lockout off of a defective forklift, then went on break and waited. About 30 minutes later, I saw my manager walking back from the head office and looking ticked beyond belief. Later, I heard from someone who knows him that he got punished severely, especially for the forklift. From then on, he avoided me and wouldn't even speak to me or look at me. After that, I continued to slow my work pace down and got a bit of satisfaction each day from a complete crap show the place had become, and how backed up it was every single day. After I left the company, I heard they hired 5 guys to do my job, and they still did a crap job at that. Had they treated me better instead of coming at me like they did, they would have been still getting the top quality of work from me that they got when I first joined them, and things would have went along just fine. I can't even imagine how much money I must have cost that company by sticking to the exact letter of the rules. Here we have another employee who went above and beyond for their company and was never acknowledged for their contributions. Employers love to add extra tasks to what you're responsible for, but never want to pay you for that responsibility. Our original poster in this case really just decided to be done with it and do the bare minimum that was required of them. You can only get taken advantage of for so long before you just get tired of it. And when a company's pulling shenanigans like this to get you to try and quit, they gotta realize that as long as you're still an employee there, you have the potential to screw them over way more than they do you. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and don't forget to subscribe. Negligent father tries to sue Starbucks after his little girl breaks her arm. This was Starbucks in the mid-2000s. It was a summer afternoon. Outside my old Starbucks is a small garden with some trees, some flowers, and a 3-foot-tall rock wall perimeter. The 3-foot-tall rock wall has been neglected over the years, and several rocks are prone to uncontrollable shifting whenever too much weight is applied. It's a decoration wall, not a jogging wall. Most parents advise their children not to run along the wall. Until today. A little girl is running laps along the unstable garden wall while her entitled dad is on his cell phone and ignoring her. Knowing that garden wall is unstable, I ask the little girl to stop. She ignores me, so I advise her dad of the possible danger. Sir, could you please ask your daughter to stop running laps along the unstable garden wall?
Why?
The wall's unstable. She could easily hurt herself.
Oh, you in charge here?
No.
Then don't tell me what to do.
I relay the necessary information to the shift supervisor who's presently in charge. Sir, could you please ask your daughter to stop running laps along the unstable garden wall? It's not safe and she could easily hurt herself.
Oh, are you in charge here?
Yes, I am.
I don't tell you how to make coffee. Don't tell me how to raise my kid.
Minutes later, a rock in the garden wall collapses beneath the little girl's feet. She loses her footing, falls 3 feet, and breaks her arm. The shift supervisor and I witnessed the whole thing. Fortunately, a third member of staff is an ex-reservist who knows first aid. Upon learning what has happened, he grabs the first aid and rushes to the scene. Hello, little girl. I know first aid. Can I help you? The little girl nods her head, crying too hard to speak. While the ex-reservist is applying ice and a splint to the little girl's arm, her entitled dad ignores them both, instead choosing to yell at the shift supervisor.
Where's your manager? I'd like to know why you didn't maintain your garden wall.
In actuality, the garden wall is the responsibility of our landlord and not the Starbucks coffee company. None of this information is making the little girl feel better. Entitled dad threatens us with a lawsuit for the next 15 minutes, repeating the same phrases ad nauseum.
Where's your manager? Why didn't you maintain your garden wall?
After he's satisfied himself with his yelling, he acknowledges his daughter and drives her to the hospital, barely thanking the ex-reservist who tended to her injury and her pain. The following day, entitled dad returns with his daughter and a lawyer. The lawyer takes statements from the ex-reservist, the shift supervisor, and myself. The jerk wanted to sue Starbucks for 5 figures, but in the end, a lawsuit never materialized. To the best of my knowledge, the little girl made a full recovery. Honestly, this is just kinda gross to me. His little girl got hurt and all he saw was a paycheck. You need to attend to your kid, dude. Other things are important right this second. You want to come back with a lawyer the next day? Fine, whatever. But for now, take care of your kid. She's scared and hurt. She wants your attention, not you yelling at the supervisor. Considering you were warned about this by 2 different employees, you can't really go getting in his face about it. My coworker buddy's ego was getting a little too swollen, so we had to deflate him just a little bit. So a bit of backstory. I'd been at my current job for about a year back then. We handle finances for big and small companies alike, and I enjoyed it immensely. Think of us as a kind of economic mercenary group. You need help? You put in a call and get help. Simple as that. Anyway, starting there, I quickly made friends with 2 other workers. Let's call them Bert and Ernie. Bert had been there for 3 years when this story takes place, and was a great employee. Always on time, staying late if needed, and asking if anyone needed help without prompting when he had time over. Stressing what a great guy he is because he's the victim of this story. Ernie had been there just a few months longer than me, and was a similarly great and funny guy, though he wasn't as punctual. Bert had landed us an extension with one of our biggest clients for his work, and even gotten one of their sister companies to sign up. Needless to say, this was a big deal, and everyone from managers to the vice president was praising him. This sadly got a bit to his head. He got cocky. He was still the same helpful guy as always, but he went from,
"Hey bro, should I help you out?"
to,
"Ah, dear peasant, allow me, Lord Bird of Economica, to assist thee in thine labors."
I'm not exaggerating. Anyway, we needed to take him down a peg, and me and Ernie hatched an idea. See, I realized that Bert had never met my girlfriend. He knew I had one and we'd been together for 5 or 6 years, but he'd never seen her face. And so I set our plan into action. I went to my girlfriend, explained the situation, and told her my plan. Basically, she and her friend, let's call her Abby, would just need to go out drinking that Friday at a very specific pub. That Friday, I asked Bert and Ernie after work, "Hey, let's go to very specific pub and grab a few drinks." Both of them singles at the time, drinking was likely something they'd have done anyway. Might as well do it with friends. A few hours later, we're a few drinks in and starting to get tipsy. I get a message from my girlfriend. "Pigeons have left the nest." A few minutes later, a second one arrives. Pigeons arriving at the second nest within 5. I cannot tell you how happy I am she used code words without any prior planning. Best girlfriend ever. This was my cue, and I started bragging to my friends, basically explaining how easy it was to pick up a girl, and all my tricks and how if they used them, they wouldn't be singles for long. Ernie, who knew the plan, just laughed it off, and Bert did the same. Seeing my girlfriend and Abby walk in, I say, "Tell you what, I bet you the next round that I can make that girl make out with me within 3 minutes of talking," pointing to my girlfriend. As expected, Bert takes the bait without any prompting.
"Sure, I'll even put in the next 3 rounds. No way you can do that."
Ernie gasps as if in shock of Bert's bravery. I just smirk and walk over to the girls, talk to them for a minute, and after making sure the guys have a clear view from the other side of the bar, I grab my girlfriend's waist and get to it. I return a few minutes later with some ruffled hair and can't help but chuckle at Bert's gaping mouth. He grumbles something about natural charms but keeps his promise. A few drinks later, I get another text. I explained everything to Abby. She had an idea for a second bet. Tell me more. How about you hook up with both of us and leave? I've never texted a thumbs up so fast in my life and started priming Bert to take another bet, essentially bragging about how easy it is to make women putty in your hands if you just know the trick. He's grumpy and a little drunk, and I can tell he'll agree to any bet I make now. Tell you what, I bet that I can take both of these girls home with me right now without any struggles. I can see that Bert is tempted but wary of me.
What's the wager?
If I can't do it, I'll do the entire presentation on Tuesday.
Deal!
Basically, this was an end-of-year presentation going through the contracts we'd gotten during the year and reviewing company income and costs. Me, Bert, and Ernie had been assigned this to do together, and with it being an hour-and-a-half long presentation at least, 3 people talking would be best for everyone. However, this is when Ernie made an already sweet deal even sweeter. Wait, this doesn't seem fair to me. I think we need to give Bert something more in case he loses. Bert looks at him cautiously.
What did you have in mind?
And honestly, I'm pretty sure I owe Ernie a kidney for this. I'll be forever grateful to him for this. Do you still have your Elvis outfit from last Halloween?
Yeah.
And so it was decided, after some prompting, that Bert would do the entire presentation dressed as Elvis in case he lost. FYI, this was sparkly Elvis. Elvis with the hair and white shiny suits. None of that sexy OG Elvis. Long story short, I went up to the girls, tapped on their shoulders where they were standing at the bar, and after a few seconds of seduction, I left with one of them on each arm. 5 minutes later, I get a text from Ernie, showing Bert's face of, "What have I done?" The girls and I went to another bar a few blocks away and then went back home to separate apartments at the end of the night. That Monday, I reminded Bert of his promise, and he reluctantly explained that he'd spent all Sunday getting the suit ready. Tuesday was hands down the best day of my life. We'd already warned our manager of the change in schedule and who'd be making the presentation, and he laughed, but I don't quite think he believed us at the time. Bert enters the presentation as it's about to begin, held in front of our entire department of 50+ people he sees on a daily basis, dressed in full Elvis suit and wig, and starts the presentation. Everyone, including me and Ernie, were laughing so hard for the first 10 minutes he couldn't get a word in, and just stood there waiting for them to stop. The best part though, he did the voice. Once the laughter died down and he could do the presentation properly, he thought, screw that, and went full Elvis. People were chuckling all throughout the presentation. It was a mess. After that chaotic event, he was seen in an even better light than before. People appreciated his bravery and sense of humor. When we told him the truth behind the bets a few months later, he laughed and smacked us on the back, telling us that he'd get us back. I like this one. We don't have a real jerk here, I would say. Someone did really well at their job and let it kind of go to their head a little bit. I'm sure after this, he was humbled just a little bit. I mean, hey, that's great that you did a good job. Everyone's happy for you. Really good. But you don't need to go holding it over everyone else's head. People aren't gonna like that after a little while. Our original poster just wanted to mess with him a little bit, but it was the others around him that really seized the opportunity. It wouldn't have gotten to the level it did if it weren't for them. I told my son's girlfriend that if she keeps disrespecting me, she can get out of my house. I don't care that she's pregnant. I, 43-year-old female, have a son, 18-year-old male, who got his high school girlfriend, 18-year-old female, pregnant. It was obviously an unplanned pregnancy, and it resulted in my son's girlfriend getting kicked out of her house by her mom. I never liked this girl, but I obviously couldn't let her live on the streets now that she's carrying my grandchild, so I let her live in our house. Now, both she and my son gave up on college for the near future, and my son is now working a full-time job so he can provide for them. The problem is that his girlfriend refuses to do anything, absolutely anything, all day. She just locks herself in my son's room, eating snacks and watching videos on my son's computer. I need to drag her out to just help me with the cooking and to clean up at least the room she's staying in. But she always complains about how I'm working her like a slave even though she's already in constant pain because of her pregnancy. And then she'll come crying to my son about my treatment of her. Mind you, she doesn't have a high-risk pregnancy. I know that because me and my husband are the one fully paying for her medical controls. And I don't ask her to do tasks like cleaning the toilet or anything similar. However, she really crossed the line when after I got dressed up, she asked me where I was going, and when I told her that I'm getting ready for church, her exact response was, "I didn't know there were churches that were allowing people looking like striptease dancers in. At that point, I absolutely had it with her, and I told her straight that I don't care who she is. I won't allow her to disrespect me while living in my house. And if she can't keep her attitude in check, then she can get out of my home. She pretty much started crying at that point and immediately called my son, who later on also gave me attitude for treating his girlfriend like garbage when I don't know what she's going through. My husband also thinks that while she was definitely out of line with that, she was probably only acting out because of pregnancy hormones, and that I could have handled the situation better without straight up threatening to leave her homeless. Am I the jerk? I think this is one of those scenarios where you're both jerks. Absolutely, she was completely out of line with that comment, especially when you guys are going above and beyond to provide her a place to stay and look after her. But the crackback came a little hard, I think. I get that you're offended and lashing out in the moment. But yeah, she is a pregnant 18-year-old girl, pregnant with your grandchild. You can't exactly just leave her with nowhere to stay, but at the same time, she needs to learn to show you the respect you deserve. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything's linked in the description.